Hey, Think Realty, thanks so much for joining us today on the podcast. If you're listening or you're viewing, we're so glad you decided to take a few minutes out of your day to join us. We will do our best to provide you great content and information that will help you along your investing journey. But not just your investing journey, your journey to freedom. And my guest is going to talk to you about that journey here in just a moment. But I want to say a quick thank you to our podcast sponsor, which is Real Property Management. This episode is brought to you by Real Property Management. Working with the right property management company will put more money in your pocket, not less. Real Property Management provides a higher standard of property management to make sure you're maximizing the return on your investments. Experience the real difference with Real Property Management. Visit realpropertymgt.com. That's realpropertymgt.com. My guest is one of my favorite people on the planet. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but mainly because at one point in his life, he had his finger on the button of nuclear weapons. He could have destroyed the world. I mean, wouldn't you like to have a friend like that? I may have over-exaggerated that and oversold it, but my guest is Gary Pinkerton. Gary, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Eddie. I always enjoy talking to this audience. They're so like-minded, and it's like being at home with friends.
Awesome. Gary was a former submarine captain in the Navy. And he drove, most of us, we dream of driving sports cars and things like that. He dreamed of driving a nuclear submarine under the water. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I dream of driving sports cars as well, and do that as often as I can. But yeah, cool. It was an incredible life. It was, almost 26 years of my life was being in and around nuclear submarines. I was on 4 of them. In my time there, and I had the wonderful experience to be able to command USS Tucson, fast attack Los Angeles class in 2009 to 2011 out in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, which is just an incredible place to go to sea from. Yeah, just incredible. 150 people loved it, really did. Previous awesome. Life, though, at this point.
That's awesome. And now made a major transition, and I know you're no stranger to the Think Realty audience. You're one of our resident experts. And made a massive transition into helping others find freedom by gaining a word that you use frequently, and I'm going to let you actually use that word and explain it and kind of give it as a segue into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so the word is agency, and my business coach and dear friend said, Gary, what you're talking about is that you want to help others gain agency. And I had the same response that one of my clients had when I started talking about it on my podcast, which is called Gary's Gulch, right? And it's all about freedom. And it comes from Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand's amazing fictional work that talked about, the risks of getting kind of sucked into socialism and what it did to her mother country of Russia before she kind of came over here in the 1940s and 50s. Anyway, so Gary's Gulch, I talk a lot about this personal freedom, which is my mission in life. As I transitioned out of the military and left command and kind of passed up on the opportunity to go be an admiral, I just felt like I was being pulled to help people in their individual lives gain freedom and agency. So agency is just simply the ability to have the financial wherewithal to make your own decisions in your life. If you don't like what they're telling you to do in the location where you are or what your boss is saying, you have put in place in your life the ability to not have to do that anymore. And so Sue and I just walked that talk in 2020 when, there were a lot of things happening in the great state of New Jersey around a bunch of friends that we had that just were not consistent with what we wanted to do with our lives. And so after living there for 10 years, we moved to Florida, and it was just a better, more consistent fit. But we were only able to do that, which is kind of my point, because we had set up our lives methodically to have the ability to not be tied down to a specific geographic location, job, or something else like that. So agency is huge, but my client said, Gary, you keep talking about this agency thing, and it's making me sick to my stomach, because he was thinking like CIA and DEA and all these government words that have the word agency in there. It's kind of an interesting discussion about why agency is in those things, but that would take more time than we have. But anyway, I want to help families, people, businesses gain the ability to make their own financial decisions, which in the end makes us all free in America.
Yeah, and you do that through a couple of vehicles. One main vehicle, people I'm sure have come to know you for, and that's these life products that really are known as infinite banking, and you provide a lot of these strategies and structures. And if you don't mind, just give a real quick high overview of that. Maybe we won't spend as much time in that today because we have in the past, but maybe talk about just how you do it, but then let's jump into what you're doing with that vehicle.
Sure, that's awesome. Thanks, Eddie. So the foundational piece, if you think of like building this Egyptian pyramid, if you will, you're building these just block after block, you're building this hierarchy of wealth. The bottom foundational layer is before you get to all the cool, fun investing aspects of life and putting your money to work and making it grow. This is a foundational layer, which is really about saving and protection, right? So it's building an emergency fund, it's building reserves for your properties. And so there's different places where you can store and grow this cash, and some are better than others at doing that. And so I personally in my life about 12 years ago started using whole life insurance of all things to collect and grow cash, because it just does it in orders of magnitude better than I can do it in a savings or checking account. And so that product is really this underlying foundation. And then we access that capital frequently to go do investments and things like real estate, which is why I love Think Realty in the audience.
Yeah, and so Think Realty, viewer, listener, you are thinking about your real estate career. You're thinking about your investing journey. And I want you to hear what Gary just said. Using this as a foundational layer to make that exponentially better and larger. And so now that you have this foundation set, Gary, you are obviously investing in real estate. And so let's talk about these hard assets that you're now leveraging this vehicle that you've created to purchase. Kind of explain your kind of pathway there.
Yeah, so you can have this money sit and grow in the background and compound in a tax-free environment at 4 to 5% today, when the alternatives are at 0.2% or maybe 1%. And then getting taxed, right? And they don't provide all of the other benefits like protecting the number one asset. And I'm number one asset in my life, not yours. Like, we, the human, number one asset there to protect, right? So then you have this cash, an amazing, kind of foundational piece, and it's ready to go to work. And so you access it by borrowing against this asset to, put the money, use it as collateral, essentially, just like a line of credit on a great house that you have that has equity in it. You can access that equity without having to sell the property. Doing the same thing here, you can access the cash and go into things like real estate or businesses. I love both because there are things that you're directly controlling, and you're controlling the outcome because you're paying attention and you're involved in it, right? As opposed to buying a stock, bond, or mutual fund somewhere where you're so far removed from what's really happening at the deck plate level that your chance of success is really more like gambling than it is when you own that property and when you own that business and you're directly involved in it. Because in the end, the most important thing to bet on is ourselves, right? And so with the rental real estate, like, why do I think that's a foundational kind of layer that's right above the infinite banking? It's because it is something that's going to win in all environments, right? So people say, well, is it the right time to invest in real estate? My answer is always yes. I don't care what the economic environment looks like. It's always going to be yes. And my analogy with, explaining why that is because it's an ideal investment, right? So that's 5 letters. That is an acronym for me to remember how to hit all of the really, really important points about rental real estate. And this is true whether you're doing it as a person who's rehabbing, as a business, but really what I'm talking about is directly buying and holding onto these properties, right? So they provide income, right? There's cash flow that's coming from them. They provide deductions. The primary one that we always talk about is depreciation, but there's other, you can deduct expenses, et cetera, right? And then you're building equity. So IDE, building equity, which is the tenant paying off the mortgage for you. So you typically will purchase one of these things like 20% down. The other 80% is not yours yet, but the tenant pays that off over 20 or 30 years. Right? Then it appreciates, right? That's the big one in the current environment, the appreciation. And then there's leverage, which is really kind of the same thing. You can, not only does your property go up if you pay cash for it, but if you borrow 4/5 of the account or of the property value, boy, it's something there. So if you have a $100,000 property, you can borrow 80,000 of it, right? And so 4/5 of the money is not even yours when you start. And so if you have an asset that's going up, in normal times at 3 or 4%, 5 times that is like 20% return, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I love the phrase you used about betting on yourself.
Yeah.
You know, what you're saying is that these businesses, these real estate assets, you're keeping them close because you're still betting on yourself because you have some level of control. We've got a mutual friend, Marco Santarelli, and he always says this, that, he gets asked, like, when should I buy a rental property? And he was like, well, if you can't buy it yesterday, then buy it today. It doesn't matter what it is. And I'm bullish right now. I'm still building houses. We've got another mutual friend that I just signed loan docs to build 8 more today. I'm ready to go. And it's because I can control that to a degree, right? And if I've got that layer of protection like you talked about, it allows me to extend that and go harder after those opportunities. Do you feel the same way about the real estate market? I mean, obviously, we're in this kind of undulating, moving, tumultuous time period. However, you feel like these long-term assets, these hard assets, are still good investments, and we should really be jumping into them as fast as possible.
Absolutely, I do. So back in 2000, I was one of those guys who was just checking out day trading kind of stuff, and so I had some margin on some stocks I was buying. Right, that didn't really work out well for me, but it taught me a lesson that if there is a chance that the asset can go down for an extended period of time and substantially down in value, having margin on it, which is the same thing as having a mortgage on a property, can actually work against you. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, though: we have this stated intention and over 100 years demonstrating that we are going to devalue the US dollar. Every hard asset out there is going to go up in value. Maybe you could pick a year or two, maybe in 2023 when we look back on it, because interest rates were really high, the purchase prices had to come down a little bit maybe to fit budgets. So maybe we see that in 1 year, but we're not going to see it long term. Even if you look at people who purchase properties like today, for 10 years they've probably been thinking they were idiots buying properties in 2009 and 10, they're still way up in value today. And 20 years from now, they're going to be way up from there, which is why Marco makes that comment.
Yeah.
So buying margin on something that has to go up because physics says it has to go up because every economy in the world is on fiat currency and they're depreciating their dollars. It has to work. It has to go up. So I feel a lot better about that than I did when I was doing it with stocks.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. What I love about you, Gary, is that you give so much. And, our viewers, if you're sitting here and you're kind of processing what Gary's saying, and you're like, I don't know that I deeply understand exactly what he's saying, he's happy to jump on a call with you, explain this to you. I know I've sent some referrals your way in recent days, and the feedback is always, oh man, he jumped on the phone, he sat down, he explained everything, he gave me so much value, and I appreciate that so much about you. So an engagement with you, if a Think Realty viewer today or listener today is saying, okay, I want to take this a step deeper, I want to understand infinite banking, I understand how to leverage that into real estate. What are the next steps so they can kind of get that? I think you've already got some videos on Think Realty and things like that, but how could they engage with you?
Yeah, on kind of the mindset of hierarchy of wealth, that pyramid analogy I was trying to give audibly there, and on real estate, if you go to the Resident Expert program, there's a small amount of that, and there's about 20 more videos that are in line for production here. So I will continue to add there. Meeting with me personally, which I absolutely love to do with like-minded individuals. The easiest way is just to reach out to me at my website. So it's just Gary@GaryPinkerton.com. Very simple.
That's great. You are an investor. You practice what you preach. What are some exciting deals or things that you're personally involved in right now or in the upcoming days? Yeah.
So as far as direct ownership, so I'm partnering with some really good friends on a 48 unit resort that could also be a marina. And I'm a big fan of Cape Coral, Florida. So our mutual friend, Rob Knight, putting that together, that thing's amazing. I have 5 properties coming out of the ground down in Cape Coral that I'm going to use, I think, for short-term rentals. The beautiful thing about coastal Florida, at least the West Coast, is that you can use it. You can just shift over and go long-term rental, and it'll cash flow either way. And so I love that on the direct ownership side. I'm looking more and more into kind of franchise, real estate related franchise ownership. I'm a little early to take that one to print. Mm-hmm. And then on the indirect ownership side, I'm just following what the government wants us to do out there. So I'm bullish on natural gas. and several other like real estate related things. I'm very bullish on a lot of the more affordable housing type things that are out there.
That's great. I always find, such commonality with you, your thought process, and appreciate your friendship and your leadership in the industry. What is maybe a piece of advice? I know we're kind of drawing close on time here, but what's a piece of advice if somebody's sitting here today, they're kind of processing everything we're saying, maybe they have a little bit of fear or anxiety about where the market is, the Federal Reserve raising rates again, what's maybe a piece of advice that you would give somebody that's just sitting there with all these thoughts floating around their head?
Yeah. So the way that you get rid of fear, fear is what's the old quip? It's a false evidence appearing real, right? And so the way you figure that out is you just work on education on number one asset. So you continue to learn. We can do all that for free online, but it's better when you can get in a mastermind or some way of interacting, and even if it's a local Realty meetup group. That's how you get rid of the fear to be able to take action. And then if the fear is coming from it's just too big of a swing, like I feel like I'm swinging for the fences here, then just move back to something that looks more like a base hit. Partner with 3 other people so that your money in is $5,000 or $10,000, so that you can still get in there and gain the experience, but you've been able to remove the roadblocks. So my message, I guess, Eddie, is do what's necessary to remove the roadblocks so you can move forward, because when you move forward, you gain experience, not always positive experiences, but I've learned the most from when I made a bad decision. But move forward. Otherwise, it's always going to be a kind of shoulda, woulda, coulda. And you're back to Marco's comment that the best time is today. Don't wait.
Yeah, that's really, really good. How can they get in touch with you? What's the easiest way?
Yeah, so the website, GaryPinkerton.com, is good. I'll also give out my cell phone. It's 860-389-7620. So I try, especially with emails, to get back to everyone by the end of that same day. So I just feel like it's respectful to do so. So I'm not the guy who's going to, waste people's time or not get back to them. I'm going to be genuine.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for everything that you do for the industry and for your friendship. Thank you for always providing such great content to our listeners and viewers.
Awesome, my friend. See you soon.
All right. See you soon, Gary. This episode is brought to you by Real Property Management. Working with the right property management company will put more money in your pocket, not less. Real Property Management provides a higher standard of property management to make sure you're maximizing the return on your investments. Experience the real difference with Real Property Management. Visit realpropertymgt.com. That's realpropertymgt.com. Think Realty viewer and listener today, if you're listening to that, could I admonish you a little bit? Not in a negative way, but what he said is so important. And I think sometimes we hear messages like that in short order, and then we just kind of stow it away in the back of our mind, never taking action. The last words that he said were about taking action, overcoming fear, moving forward. Would you commit to me today, commit to me mentally, that you will take some step forward on what you just heard, whether it's doing more research on the markets, or we're going to invest, or learning more about whole life policies, or infinite banking, or reaching out to Gary, or maybe just jumping into the resident expert videos on Think Realty and diving in and absorbing them. Just take a step. That's why we're here. We want to be your companion. But we don't want to look back at you from 6 miles ahead of you and say, boy, I wish you would have came with us. We want to be with you. That's why I built Think Realty almost 10 years ago in 2013, was just to be a companion along the way for those that are taking this journey. I want to take it with you. And that's why we put out such great content. If you're not getting our magazine, make sure you go to the local Barnes & Noble, pick one up off the shelf, or get one sent to your house directly through thinkrealty.com. And then if you haven't started making plans for next year, we've got our Houston conference, and we're already promoting that. It's coming up March 23rd and 24th. And for you podcast listeners, the ones that have been so faithful to us, we want to be faithful to you. We've got a buy one, get one special for you today. You can go to thinkrealty.com/Houston. And if you put in 2 tickets into the cart and you put in the word podcast. You can kind of see it right above my head there. Podcast, all in caps. It'll give you a buy one, get one free on that. Make sure you bring yourself and a friend, and let's do this together. So that's March 23rd and 24th next year. Thanks so much for joining the podcast today. As always, I hope we brought you some value. Give us some feedback on social media, or come visit us at one of our conferences. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day, and happy investing.